Okay, and we're live.
Thank you, Gio, and welcome everyone to today's ESG office hours. We are going to wait about 1 minute to let others sign in and join us today. So until then, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat with your name and the region you represent and anything that you would like to say on this so far clear day. It's not quite as soggy where I'm at as it was yesterday, but soon the rain will be coming. And we will be back in about 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to HCD's office hours for the ESG program. My name is Anthony Zapata, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Uh, we invite you all to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name in the region you represent. And we love to see that information in there. We like to see who's on board today. We're very familiar with most of you, but some of you are new, and it's great to see new folks online. And as you may have noticed in the chat, I put in there, we should have some kind of door prize for the first person who gets in there. I don't know what it is, what would be, but we should think of something. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Go over a few of the ground rules for today. First and foremost, HCD policy does not allow for AI note takers. I know that can be kind of a challenge sometimes, but it is the policy. And so we do have to kick you out if you have an AI note taker assigned, not kick you out, but we have to kick out the note taker. So just to let you know. And for how to ask a question, all questions must be submitted in the question and answer box. If you look at the slide, you can see it's on the bottom right, the Q&A box, and on your ribbon, it should be just down below, and you should be able to hover over it and enter your question there. Please type your organization name and question in the Q&A box, and our team will read the question out loud either during or at the end of the presentation and do our best to provide answers. We'll also try and provide them just directly. If it's a quick and easy one, we can just respond in the chat. I'm not in the chat, but in the Q&A box. All the questions and answers entered into the Q&A box will be recorded as part of the public record, and this meeting is being recorded. Next slide, please. Both the slides and the recording will be sent out to all participants within approximately 2 weeks of the event, and that way you don't have to memorize everything, but generally it takes about 2 weeks, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little quicker, but generally about 2 weeks. Next slide, please. So for today's office hours, our agenda is first, we're going to provide ESG updates and announcements. Second, we're going to have a spotlight series today on submitting RFFs. And then we want to make sure to leave enough time, especially given the subject matter today, for technical assistance and Q&A. Next slide, please. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on the ESG updates. We're in the process of updating the ESG standard agreements for fiscal year 25. As of now, you should have all have been notified by your grant representative or your COC of your fiscal year 25 ESG funding allocation. We are currently working with grantees to finalize their budgets, their preliminary budgets for fiscal year 25, so we can update the standard agreements. And as we move forward now, and we're getting ready to finalize this amendment process, the legwork that goes into it, we need your approval and verification of all the information that you've sent us, to move forward with the amendment. So please take action and respond to your grant representative or email or telephone call, or even the NOFA inbox if it's more convenient, and let us know that your agency is ready to move forward with your fiscal year 25 allocation and contract amendment. The amendment process, it can take some time, and for those of you who've been around, you may know this, but if you're new, I wanted to let you know that when an amendment is going through in eCivis, you are unable to submit RFFs, requests for funding, and we know how important that is, and we want to make sure you are able to do so. So please take action, respond now as soon as you can, and let us know that you're ready to move forward with the amendment. And Tim, did you have anything to add on that?
Nope. Thank you, Anthony. That covers everything.
Okay, thank you. I always lean on Tim, folks. He's the man when it comes to information about amendments and budgets and everything. So, the next slide, please. Hey, great news! Regarding the 2025 FMR waiver, HCD submitted a request to waive the fair market rent in 2024. You may have recalled, and it was granted back in January of 2025. HCD recently submitted a new request to HUD to continue to waive restriction of rentals that are above the fair market rental rate. And the waiver is effective from January 18th through, well, I guess I should say first that, yay, it was approved. Yay, it's great news. And it's approved for January 18th, 2025 through October 2026, or upon release by HUD of their 2027 FMR rates, whichever comes first. And we just wanted to let you know that if you plan to use the waiver, then your agency will need to respond to an email sent to you by your program rep and attach the form, the attached form with ESG FMR waiver acknowledgement. Also want to remind you that completing FMR and rent reasonableness, if that is part of your award, is still required. If the waiver doesn't make it go away, those are all required elements still for your FMR waiver. We just have the luxury now of not having to always meet the fair market rent or be in that range. And please note in your client file that you are using the FMR waiver with every RFF that you submit that is applicable, because over time we need to make sure you're still interested in using it. Sometimes when an agency gets new staff, the new staff member may not be aware of it and they forget to submit the waiver or they do it incorrectly. So that's stuff that we monitor on and that HUD will monitor on, and we want to make sure that you are aware of that. And once again, I'm going to reach to a teammate. Tuesday, Amanda, did I miss anything on this wonderful news about the fair market rent waiver?
I think you got it all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Okay, next slide. Hey, this is big news. Upcoming in April, we are going to combine our office hours with another HCD program that most of you are very familiar with, the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Grant Program, or HHAP. We will begin doing this for the April office hours for April 2026, and there will be a change of office hour dates. It's changing from Wednesday, the third Wednesday of each month, from 10 to 11, to the third Tuesday of each month from 10 a.m. to noon. And the format is going to be, it's a joint office hours. And we still haven't worked out on the details about how these intros and updates are going to go. But from 10 to 11, HHAP will be presenting their information and TA. And then from 11 a.m. to noon, the ESG team will be presenting their information and TA. We will be sending new invites out, and registration will be required because it's going to be a new Zoom meeting. But we are very much looking forward to working together with our grantees and with the HAP team on this. Next slide, please. And on that note of wanting to work together is you might be asking, wait, why are you doing this? Well, we know that approximately, out of the approximately 50 grantees for ESG funds, about half of those are also HAP grantees. And we want to provide, better customer service and convenience to our grantees by combining our efforts and cutting the number of office hour days per month from our programs from 2 down to 1. We're combining them and combining our resources. And since most of you have to attend both meetings on separate days anyway, it's a good idea to condense it down to 1. We also believe it's a great idea for HCD to share information on the 3 different homeless programs, 2 over there and 1 over here, in one single venue. Grantees can ask questions about the programs. They will be subject matter experts from all of the programs associated with HAP and ESG who are going to be online and able to assist. We're also hoping that by combining them, it's going to lead to more opportunities for our grantees in terms of identifying ways to braid their funding, looking at different funding ideas, how to deploy homeless assistance dollars in their community to better serve their community, to better achieve their mission, and also to increase the technical assistance that we provide and the customer service that we provide. So we're all very excited about it. Both teams are working behind the scenes to get this put together for April, and you will be hearing more about this in emails and in next month's last ESG standalone office hours. Any questions, you can always reach out to your grant rep, and or you can ask us today during the Q&A portion. Next slide, please. Okay, back to the updates on the contracts. We talked about the fiscal year 25 allocations that we're working on the amendment for right now. What you're all in the middle of is your 2024 contracts. And as you know, there are expenditure milestones and deadlines associated with your contracts. And so for those of you who might be having trouble submitting RFFs at this point or getting a large draw in, we are going to be reaching out to you to identify opportunities for a larger draw on your next RFF submittal. As I mentioned, there are expenditure milestones and deadlines. We need to keep on track. We need to keep consistent with those, and we're here to help. Our reps will be working out these details with their grantees. We'll be reaching out with telephone calls and emails to help you plan accordingly to get a bigger draw in on your next RFF submittal. We want to see these resources deployed in your community. We want to help you achieve your mission. So this is just a reminder that get those RFFs in, and let's make it a large RFF, as large as is feasible. Next slide, please. And on that note, we've got our great team, our ESG team, our grant representatives right here, Sam, Giovanni, and Ryan. They can assist you. They're subject matter experts. They know the ins and outs. They can help you in terms of developing those RFFs and looking at eligible activities and possibly identifying additional opportunities for you to get your dollars spent down so that you're consistent with the expenditure milestones and deadlines that are in your standard agreements. We encourage you to submit RFS monthly and for as large a draw as feasible. So with that, let's go to the next slide, which I believe is a questions opportunity. And I'm going to first check with Amanda to see if we have anything in the Q&A. And then feel free to type something in the Q&A or let us know if you have any questions at this point in time. Amanda?
There is no questions in the chat currently.
Okay.
Or in the Q&A box.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. So let's go ahead then and jump to our Spotlight series. ESG Office Hour Spotlight Series. Ta-da! It's on submitting RFFs. It's a refresher. It's a reminder. I know some of you are like, Anthony, didn't you just talk about this in September, October of last year? Yes. And I think in January and February of last year as well. it's something that keeps coming up. And, we just want to make sure that our grantees are very aware of this sometimes complicated process. We know that ESG is difficult. We know that it's challenging. We're in the same boat. We're under the same regulations at the federal level and at the state level. And it can be challenging. So that's why we're here to help. That's why we talk about it so much, because why don't we jump to the next slide? Because I can kind of get into why it's important. We want to pay you. We're not here to try and slow these down or, oh, we caught you doing this. No, it's not like that at all. We want to get these dollars deployed in your community. We want to address the homelessness issues in your community. We want to help you to assist people who need this assistance, especially, given the current weather, how bad it's been here in Northern California with the rain. It's, we really need to get out there and assist people as much as we can to get them off the streets and into stable housing. So we're here to help. This isn't a nagging. This is coaching. This is TA. We're on the same team. We want to help you and your agency complete its mission. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into submitting RFFs. And with the most basics. So folks who've been here for a while, this is very much a refresher, a reminder. For those of you who are new, this might be helpful in terms of the required going over the required elements of the RFF process. And they are listed here on this slide. We start with the RFF form. We have the detailed expense report spreadsheet, or DER, the DER, you'll hear us referring to it in different ways like that. And then you have supporting documentation. And then you have component requirements for supporting documentation and the DERs. And then there are supporting documentation requirements related to which number RFF you're submitting, whether it's RFF number 1 or if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, and on. And then finally, we have the whole eCivis. You get all this information together and then you enter it in eCivis. And so when submitting RFFs, our grantees do a pretty good job. However, when you have all 6 of these items together, that's where the challenges can kick in, as they all have to match. They all have to match perfectly. They all have to be accurate. And in each section, there's pitfalls that you can run into, and we hope to cover some of those today. So next slide, please. So the RFF form, and I did some screen snaps. I was trying to submit this, get this online so you can see it. It can be a little fuzzy. It's hard to get that in, a PDF onto a PowerPoint slide. So my apologies for if it is a bit fuzzy on some of these slides. And what we're looking at is the first section of the RFF form. And let me just take one step back, because I tend to talk quickly and I forget sometimes that we're looking at this in a sequential, a linear way. So we're starting with I listed those elements, the components, the elements of an RFF, submitting an RFF. And we're going to go by them, all 6 of them, one by one. This is the first component, submitting an RFF on the RFF form. And just some gentle reminders here that the grant number for your ESG award needs to be part of every RFF. It needs to be on every DIR. It needs to be on the indirect cost calculator. It needs to be on the supporting documentation. Your totals that you enter here on the RFF form must match the DIR, the supporting documentation. Every line item needs to add up on the DIR. And all these totals must match in eCivis as well. Also required is your award information for your agency. It must be consistent across your documents. If you're unsure of that, you can always reach out to your rep, or you can quickly look on your standard agreement if you have that handy. We also asked that when you're completing these forms, especially the DIR, when we get there, don't delete sections if they're not applicable. I know that can be helpful or time saving, but no, it tends to mess up everything on our end. So just leave them as they are. If you're unsure of what to put there, you can always reach out to your rep. But looking at this screenshot in front of us, you're going to have your draw request number. That's the RFF number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, your contract number, The reporting period, this is always very important that your reporting period matches across your documents. Your DIR needs to match the reporting period identified on the RFF form and also the reporting period in eCivis. And as applicable, your supporting documentation, the dates on those documents also need to be within the reporting period. You need to have your grantee name, the address, city, state, zip, and also to your HCD representative, the expiration date of your contract, your standard agreement, your contact person. This is actually something that gets missed because we do have, things change here at HCD, just like at your organizations, and who may have been your rep last year might not be the same this year. So you can't just pull last year's information forward. You have to make sure you get the right rep in, or we have to send it back. And then their contact information there as well. And, all of these little things are, as I've mentioned before, we're not trying to be, pointing our finger at you to, no, you need to do this. This is all required. We have to have it and we want to get you paid. These are the most common things that tend to trip up the process. And we have to send an RFF back to a client to have them redo the information. So next slide, please. This is the second part of the RFF form. With your budget breakdown, you request this period and a year-to-date breakdown. Most of these autofill, but you are required to make sure that your numbers here match with the numbers on the DER, the totals on the DER, and also the totals on the eCivis entry. Next slide, please. And here's one that's always a very common trip up here. This is the certification section down below on the RFF form. It's the final part that you will fill out as you're moving down the form. And all of these boxes need to be checked. And the name of the authorized person and their title and then their signature needs to be included on all of these. So don't skim over this part. It's required. Get it done. And it's just a quick submit it, and then you're good. You've covered all your bases. So let's go to the next slide. So we covered the RFF form very quickly, and we will have time for Q&A. Just want to let you know that we're going to go through these fairly quickly. The DER form. This is the one I couldn't quite get into the slide. It's very blurry. Even when I PDF'd it, it just does not come across well without pulling one up, which is also problematic as they're so tiny, as you guys know who work on these. We really need to make sure that you are filling out the correct activity drop-down menu. And if you're unsure on this, that is what we are here for. Your rep can help you. The forms have been updated this year, so it won't necessarily be the exact same as last year. So make sure to verify with your grant representative your activity is accurate and complete. We tend to run into a lot of this with staff costs, by the way. Also add if you have a client file that you are going to be supporting your DER line with, the supporting documentation, make sure to have the HMIS client file number on the line item for the DER, and to double check your description, the pay period, once again, the reporting period, the ESG amount requested. And I mean, I could go on to a lot of detail here, but the main thing is it is that attention to detail. It's making sure that each line item is correct and consistent with your RFF form, your eCivis entry, and your supporting documentation. The DERs are second only to supporting documentation in terms of where we identify problems and have to send back information for clarification. I'm going to take a pause real quick to get a drink of water, but I wanted to ask Tuesday or any of the other members of the team regarding the detailed expense reports. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
I can add, or just to give a little more detail to, when you fill out the RFF page, it's going to autofill onto the DER pages, the reporting period, the draw number, the contract number, and the grantee name. And when you're filling out the detailed expense report, it's going to autofill onto the front tab, which is the RFF section the gross amount that you enter in the last column of the DER will autofill by component onto the front page. So just to give you guys, at least we have that, so you don't have to copy and paste into the other fields.
Great, Tuesday. Giovanni here. I want to add, for auditing purposes, every one of those columns has to be filled out. So we need the check number, the journal entry dates, the gross amount, all that. And in addition, if you are claiming client costs for either HP or rapid rehousing, it is a federal requirement to have the HMIS number on there for that client.
Great. Thank you, Tuesday. Thank you, Gio. And let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, so circling back to this initial slide that we have, the 6 required elements that we're covering today. We've covered the RFF form briefly, and we've covered the DER spreadsheet. We're now going to move into the number 1 problem area when we have our RFF submitted and that we have to send them back for additional information, and that will be the supporting documentation. So next slide, please. All right. Oh, stepping back a little. ESG provides funding and support through 5 components: street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, and HMIS. Each supporting documentation requirement will vary by ESG program component. And so go ahead and go to the next slide, Gio. As a grant manager for your ESG funding, it's imperative that you know the requirements for supporting documentation of your awarded components. We have an office hours on this. We have, I think it's a 2-parter or multi-parter where we go through each component requirements. Those are located on our webpage. You can link to the YouTube webpage and watch the office hours and get the slides for these by clicking on that link that we have identified here. If you're familiar with the ESG page and you go to it, there's a link for the policies and resources, and you can find links to everything there. You will be able to click on it once you get these slides, but it's very important that you know the requirements of your awarded components, especially rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention, as those are the most stringent in terms of what is required by HUD for supporting documentation. If you need assistance with this, you can always reach out to your grant representative for assistance. They can send you checklists. They can send you links to the policies for these, and even to the HUD website if necessary for HUD's description of the requirements for your awarded components. And even the NOFA inbox, I always forget to mention the NOFA inbox. You can always reach out there too if you are unsure. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned, rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention are by far the most stringent and have a lot of requirements. And as mentioned also, you can watch whole videos on just the requirements for rapid rehousing. Go to our website. We have the checklist for that. But I did just want to illustrate the example of how the supporting documentation can vary with component by component, and the requirements. And rapid rehousing is usually the easiest in terms of they used to have a lot. It's tough. And this is just a very small illustrative example of what's required. There are the checklist you can walk down through the checklist, and it'll walk you through everything you need to submit a complete client file. But just identifying some of the items that we often see missing in a rapid rehousing client file. Just to start off, the verification of homeless status. It's a HUD requirement that for all rapid rehousing reimbursements, you have to have a verification of the homeless status of the individual that is that your agency processed through. And I'm not going to go into too much because, as I said, it's also on our website, much more comprehensive explanation. But we need the verification of homeless status. We need to sign rental agreements signed by the landlord and the tenant. VAWA certifications are required. It is a requirement by HUD. And going back to what we spoke of earlier in the updates, you need to conduct fair market rates and rent reasonableness for every rapid rehousing rental assistance client. Also, I touched on this before, but you need to have the HMIS numbers for each client so that when we're reviewing the client file for a particular client, that HMIS number matches up with the DER and we can see the expenses match. And then there's going to be a check related to the rental assistance. We have to see the check. It's a circular process, but we get all that information together. It flows very smoothly. We've got a great team that can move through these pretty quickly. Tuesday is just a whiz. She'll go through a 300-page client file in about 15 minutes, whereas it's going to take me several days probably. There's much more in terms of when you're doing the rapid rehousing. Some general reminders are the naming conventions for the files. You have to have your grant number, needs to be part of every client file. It needs to be consistent with the RFF, the DER, the indirect cost calculator, which we won't be covering today. We're going to cover that next month, but I did see a question on it in the chat. The naming conventions for client files, one client per client file with the HMIS number on each file. And the HMIS number has to tie to the same as the DER. The overall theme is that the supporting documentation must be easily tied to the expense identified on the DER and then overall on the RFF form and e-civis. Rental assistance and deposit are different activities. I know we're throwing out a lot here. I don't mean to make it like a machine gun fire, but they're just things that keep coming to mind or that that the reps have reminded us on. And
I'm going to add one more,
go
if
ahead.
you don't mind,
No,
Anthony.
please jump in because I'll just keep throwing stuff out. I need to
Another form that's commonly missed is the rental assistance agreement between the landlord and the provider. So that also needs to be added to the list of things that are commonly missed. So, go ahead, Anthony. I just wanted to throw that out.
Oh,
there.
no, that's fine. Thank you. That is kind of, you see the bottom bullet on the screen and more. It's not an exhaustive list that you're looking at right here. These are just some of the main items that we just almost every time, just right away, when we open up an incomplete client file, we'll just look and see right away, oh, there's no homelessness verification. There's no rental agreement. These are things that we can catch right away. And your rep can help you with this. I would highly recommend, setting if you're new to rapid rehousing or if you're unsure of the requirements or you have a new subcontractor who has never done rapid rehousing before, I would highly encourage you to set up a meeting with your representative and go over the checklist. Once you get through the checklist and you have it dialed in, it actually goes fairly quickly. But if you're unsure, I'm just trying to save you some pain. It can take just forever to go through these if you're not familiar with them. So please reach out to us for help. That's what we're here for. And we have a great website with all kinds of resources that have been developed over the years and a lot of training resources that we can point you to if you still feel that you need some more guidance in terms of the requirements. And once again, it is by component. We only highlighted rapid rehousing as an example because it is by far the most challenging in terms of getting a complete client file with everything correct and tied back to the DER and tied back to the RFF and meeting all of the HUD requirements, all of the state of California requirements, and all of the HCD regulations as well. So the intent is not to, once again, do this and point our finger at you. It's to let us help. We know how difficult this is. We work in it every day. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. It's really just a quick, I meant to pull it up while I was talking, but of course I got distracted. This is just the first opening section of the client file checklist for rapid rehousing. And it just illustrates some of the items, the client status. Is this someone new? Is it a continuing client? And each of those are going to have their own little subset of requirements. A continuing client, have they been recertified in the last year, which is required by HUD? When did they come in, the application date? When were they brought into the program? Is that consistent with the HMIS requirements? Is that consistent with the rental agreement? Is that consistent with the other agreements and dates that are on your supporting documentation? So yeah, you gotta take a deep breath. Those of you who work in this and have been working in it for a long time, this can be challenging at first, but once you get the hang of it, boy, some of our more experienced grantees they'll just send the client file, just just straight through. They're dialed in. They know the requirements. They know what we're going to ask for, and that's what we're trying to let you know. We're going to ask for the same thing every time. Our checklists are pretty much the best things for that. But if not, reach out to us and we can help you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, we've covered, I can't remember all of them, but that's the supporting documentation. And now we're going to the next element, which is the RFF requirements by the number of the RFF that you are submitting. We've been through this before. We've had several trainings on it, but just in case those of you who are new are not aware of this, your first RFF, we will review every single line item on that DER. We will require supporting documentation for every single line item on that DER. So as you might be gathering real quickly in your mind, you want to keep that first one kind of small, or submit whatever you like. Well, we can do it, but to get it processed very quickly, you might want to keep it small. Administrative costs, payroll costs, things like that. We have a lot of grantees who do that to move the process along, because when you get that is only the first RFF, 100%. We're going to monitor that all the way down. We're going to look at all your supporting documentation. We're going to look at every line item on your DIRT. However, from the second RFF forward, you, the grantee, will choose and highlight 2 line items on the DER, and you will highlight that for us to show us which one, and you will submit supporting documentation for only those 2 line items. So if you got a 500 line DER, as some of our larger jurisdictions may have, you only have 2 line items. So it's much, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you're looking to deploy the funds quickly, if you're looking to get paid quickly, a good advice is to keep the first one simple, but from the second onward, make them big. Make them big when we can go through them. So just to reiterate, we'll say it again. We'll always say it many times throughout the year. First RFF, 100%. We're going to look at every single line item on your detailed expense report and require supporting documentation for every single line item. That can be extensive. Your second RFF onward, the grantee will choose and highlight 2 line items on the DER and submit supporting documentation for only those 2 line items. Team, did anyone have anything else to add before I move to the next RFF requirement? All right. Seeing none, go ahead and jump to the next slide, please, Gio.
It looks like Nicole has her hand raised.
Okay.
Gio, I don't know if you can unmute Nicole.
Give me one moment.
It looks like she had a question about not being able to highlight the
All right,
line
she can
items in
talk.
the DER.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So I put it in the chat, but so the DER won't let us highlight the 2 line items. So like the DER, like the setup, the lock, the way it's locked and you can't really change anything. How do you want us to identify which 2 line items then if it doesn't allow us to highlight the items?
If Tim doesn't want to jump in on this, I'll start with, can't we just have you print it up in a PDF and then highlight it?
Yeah.
But also
Hey,
print it up. Go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, Anthony. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. So just for everybody, so within the Excel workbook, there's actually a feature at the top of the Excel workbook that's the draw feature. Okay, a little bit different than how it was before. So I know a lot of us may not be used to that, but if you access the draw feature, it will allow you to use that feature. You can pick the color that you want, preferably use yellow so we can see it easily. So Nicole, I don't know if you've tried that before, but if you want to try that, and that should be able to allow you to highlight within the workbook.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim.
Mhm.
That's very helpful, and I didn't even know that. That's great.
Um,
Go ahead, Amanda.
we have one question in the chat just before we move on.
Yeah.
Um, are the complete client files a requirement for RFFs? And I'll answer that. And the answer is yes. As we're talking about every RFF, it is required to submit backup two items for backup. And so one needs to be a client file if you have rapid rehousing. So, but at any time we can ask for full backup documentation. So you should always have full, complete client files at all times. It's a requirement for not only ESG or for HCD, but also for HUD, because HUD could come along and monitor us and we would need your complete client files, or they could monitor you as our subrecipient, and you would need client files for them also. So you need full, complete client files at all times. Okay, Anthony, that was it.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, that's a very good point. Go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, I do want to add to just adding to Amanda's point uh, that if you do have rapid rehousing or HP, we do want to see at least one client file throughout the grant period. So we understand, staff costs are important as well, but we also need to see at least one client file from you during the grant period. At least one. Oh, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And just one caveat to, or one exception to the two client files. It's that if you're funding HP clients, we'll need to see all client files in there. So if you have three, you would have to send in three for HP.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Sam. Yes, and that what Sam mentioned, and thank you, Sam. It goes back to what I mentioned in the slide about program specific requirements. Know your program specific requirements.
Yeah.
Really, just reach out to us. Set up a meeting. We're happy to sit down and go through this with you. And we can go ahead, Amanda.
Nicole asked a question, and she asked, we still need every new client file, correct? And yes, so if you have homelessness prevention, and you do, as Sam mentioned, you have to submit client files for every RFF because we do monitor all client files. You would only need to submit every client file, every new client file. So if you submit 5 client files for the first RFF, you would only need to do the new client files after that, if that makes sense. And then someone asked, do we upload the client files into eCivis? Yes, but they need to be redacted, and you need to have the HMIS numbers included so we can tie that to the other backup documentation. But the redacted part is the important part. We cannot have any names or any kind of personal identifying information in eCivis.
No, if you go back to the last slide, Gio. Thank you. And thank you, Amanda. And these are great questions. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate those. And as I mentioned, this is a refresher. This isn't a comprehensive overview of these required elements of each RFF. We do have separate office hours available on our webpage from 2025, where we went over each of these items for a full office hours. We just went over supporting documentation for our rapid rehousing and so on. And so I would highly recommend that you take a look at some of those, and they can be very informative. And so moving, kind of building off one of the questions we had there from one of our grantees, you've got your RFF form completed. You've got your DIR all lined up perfectly. You've selected the items that were going to be required supporting documentation. Your supporting documentations are perfect. Everything lines up perfectly. Now you got to enter all of this information in eCivis. And believe it or not, we do see a lot of errors in eCivis. But the most common are the information on your RFF form, for instance, the total that you're requesting, and the DER and the supporting documentation that all adds up to the total that you're requesting on the RFF form. They all have to be the same. And then that total has to match eCivis. So your numbers all have to match all the way across the board on each item. Also make sure that your reporting period matches, that the expense that you're requesting for December of 25 is consistent all the way across the board, and your supporting documentation doesn't say that it was an expense from November 2024. You need to have the RFF number correct in eCivis. It's RFF number, say, 2, and it's RFF number 2 on the form, the DER, and your supporting documentation. And also make sure all of your budget and line item totals match as well in eCivis. And let's go to the next slide, please. So this is just a wrap up, and start the TA, which we've already started in the Q&A portion here. You have your RFF form, the DER spreadsheet, supporting documentation, your component specific requirements for supporting documentation, the RFF number requirements, whether it's RFF number 1 or RFF number 2 onward, and then make sure it's all tidied up in a bow for eCivis. And with that, let's go to the next slide and open it up for any questions you may have. And please feel free to ask away, especially if you're new. We welcome questions from folks who are just getting started. We know this can be a bit overwhelming at first. Or we can even try and take a shot at some of your more seasoned veteran questions that are looking at exceptions to the rules. So please go ahead. Amanda.
There are currently no questions.
Okay. We'll give it maybe about another 30 seconds to let us know if something pops in your mind. And while some of you are thinking about that, I will just reiterate that we have the ESG webpage, and it has great information. And it goes over all of these trainings that we do. Our next ESG meeting in March, we're still going to be covering RFFs, but we're going to dive deeper into the indirect cost calculator and go over supporting documentation a bit more in terms of program-specific requirements. I wanted to keep it very high level this meeting and then get a little more detailed for the next meeting. And as I filled a little space there, I'll reach back to Amanda one more time to see if anything popped up.
We have a question in the chat.
Yeah. What if we have no RRH rental assistance to claim, but only staff costs? Then you would only send backup for the staff costs, and you wouldn't worry about client files, I believe. Is that correct, Tuesday? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that would be true. We don't need client files if you're not asking for rental assistance or direct client assistance. We have the ability, if we wanted to come in and ask for client files later, but it's not part of this mini monitoring process that we're doing currently.
One thing I also want to add to, the RFFs and the DIRs have to be, completed, to the best of everyone's ability. On our end, we have about 15 days to process that request due to the Prompt Payment Act. So it's really important that these forms are filled out correctly, that all the backup documentation is also correct. Because again, we have 15 days to process it, and if things aren't correct, we have to issue a 209, which is not punitive. I want to be very clear. It just stops the payment process. And that takes time for us to fill out as well, having to issue that and having to send it back in eCivis. And again, if you are successful in your RFF submissions, I want to also remember that once we do our full review, mini monitoring and so forth, We send that over to the state controller's office, and then they take a look at it, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for them to process payment. So it's a very, very long, long process. So we really, again, encouraging all of you grantees to just fill these out completely correctly, because again, we want to pay you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gio. And yes, that's it. This is where we don't want to sound like we're nagging. We want to sound like we're here to help. We're all on the same team. We're just coaching you up on some of the items that we have expertise on. And any way that we can assist, that's what we're here for. So go ahead and jump to the next slide, Gio. I think we're wrapping things up here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Anthony, I wanted to add one thing, just because e-civis can be really confusing. You got everybody who's doing a submission in e-civis has the ability to start a draft. And once you start that draft, we don't have access to it. We can't see what's in it. But that is a working document for you. And it ends up, it can cause, if you have an open draft and then you submit an RFF on the other side, it can cause issues with that, with the funding in e-civis. So if you have a draft, submit it or delete it. And once you've submitted something, we can have access to what's on our side. But when you have it in draft mode, we don't. We can't see it and or do anything with it.
Thank you, Tuesday. Very helpful. On the screen in front of you are some of the resources that we've been talking about, the link to the ESG webpage. And if you cannot reach your rep or you're unsure who to send a question to, you can always reach us at the NOFA inbox. It's monitored Monday through Friday during normal business hours, and generally we'll get back to you within 28 to 48 hours, depending on the complexity of the question. And we're always happy to help. Next slide, please. As always, these last two slides, we always like to list our social media. Please follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And next slide. And as I mentioned, we're all on the same team, and we be more specific. You can always join our team and help us achieve our mission here in California. We are always looking for good folks, and a lot of our HCD staff comes from our grantees. Many people on our team come directly from the grantees that we work with. So it's great to see new folks. Always great to work with you. And just want to give you a reminder that we will have one more office hours on Wednesday. That will be the March office hours. And then beginning in April, we're going to start the dual office hours with the HAP program. And you will be receiving an invite on that. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Take care.